Before she left for her girl's getaway, she slid off her wedding ring. It floored me that she ditched the symbol of our vows, like it was just some trinket she could leave behind for a few days of fun. So, I hit back by sharing a video from our dream honeymoon spot, but this time, I had another woman by my side. It was my way of showing her I could move on too, even though it hurt like hell to do it. I wasn't meant to catch that video of hers. It was like tripping over a secret she thought was safely hidden, and it slammed into me like a freight train. It showed up out of the blue on her friend's private story, probably meant for just a tight-knit group, but somehow, I stumbled across it. Call it dumb luck or destiny, but there it was, staring me down. Her hand was front and center, raising a cocktail to the camera in some lively beach club in Tulum. The image was so clear, like she wanted every detail to scream carefree and wild. No sign of her wedding ring, not even a faint tan line, just freshly manicured nails and a middle finger flipped at everything we'd built together. It was like she was spitting on our marriage with that one gesture. We'd been hitched for 2 years. Things weren't perfect, but we had dreams, big ones, that I thought we both cared about. Our marriage wasn't a fairy tale, but we had plans mapped out. Late-night talks about our future felt like we were laying the groundwork for something real. We'd signed on for a mortgage and even started tossing around the idea of kids. Those moments made me think we were building a life together, or at least I hoped we were. She pitched her girl's trip as a quick escape from the stress of her job. Just a breather, she said, to clear her head and recharge. She told me her friends needed a break, some sun, a few laughs, margaritas, and good, clean fun. That's how she framed it, and I bought it hook, line, and sinker. Man, I swallowed her story like a complete fool. I trusted her, thinking she'd never betray what we had, but I was dead wrong. But that video she posted? It wasn't just harmless fun. It was calculated, like she was putting on a show for someone, anyone, to notice. She wasn't tipsy or goofing off. She stood there, posing with purpose, like she wanted the world to see her bare ring finger loud and clear. The camera held on her just a beat too long, enough to make sure the message landed. It was like she was shouting, "I'm free," without saying a word. At first, I tried to make excuses for her. Maybe she forgot the ring at home, or maybe it slipped off somewhere, anything to avoid the truth. But then, the next day, another video popped up. This time, she was dancing with some random guy, his hands resting low on her hips, her head tilted back in laughter. She didn't push him away, not even once. If anything, she pressed closer, like she was soaking up every second of it. That's when something in me broke, not loud or dramatic, but quiet and deep. It was like a switch flipped, and I saw everything clearly for the first time. I didn't lose it or blow up her phone with angry texts. I just sat there, letting the quiet wrap around me like a shield, protecting me from the hurt. I kept watching their videos, one after another, like a masochist. They posted like fools, tagging each other, laughing, drinking, hanging on to strangers as if their partners didn't exist. I started saving everything, screenshots, videos, all of it. I wasn't going to argue with her in a shouting match, I wanted her to feel what it's like to be invisible. When she first left for the trip, I felt empty, like part of me was gone. But now, sitting there, I felt sharp, like I'd finally woken up from a bad dream. For months, I'd been pleading for her to notice me, to talk, to just be there. I was practically on my knees, begging for scraps of her attention. She always had an excuse, too tired, work was killing her. But now I saw she was saving all her spark for someone else, and it wasn't me. So, I made a move and booked a trip, not just any trip, but to the honeymoon spot we delayed because of money and jobs. She'd always said it was her dream to go there with me. She wouldn't have to dream about it anymore. I went to that place, and I made sure I wasn't alone when I did. The day before she was due back home, I dropped my video online. I kept it slick, matching her vibe, knowing it'd find its way to her feed without me lifting a finger. In it, I was grinning, at ease, holding hands with someone new, kissing her under a waterfall, whispering in her ear as she laughed and pulled me in tight. Right before the video cut off, I raised my hand to the camera, showing my bare ring finger. No ring, just like hers, a mirror of her betrayal. I didn't tag her when I posted it or send it straight to her inbox. I didn't need to, I knew it'd spread like gossip in a small town. It caught fire fast among our shared friends. The same folks who saw her acting single were now glued to my performance, and I could feel the shockwaves rolling out. Her best friend, the one who shared that first clip, watched my video within minutes. Then another friend, then another, until it went quiet, dead quiet. No more posts came from her crew. No more poolside selfies or clinking glasses, just a void online, like my video had detonated in the middle of their party. I didn't bother checking my messages. I knew they'd pile up soon enough, and I was right, she'd be mad, confused, maybe even hurt, but I didn't care. I figured she'd be at a loss for how to clap back. That was the whole point, I wanted her to feel as off balance as I'd been. This wasn't about petty revenge for kicks. It was about grabbing the pen and writing my own ending to a story she'd been controlling for too long. For the first time, I was the one turning the tables. I wasn't just reacting to her moves, I was calling the shots, and it felt like reclaiming a piece of myself. Here's the thing, the cheating wasn't what cut me deepest, not really. It was the way she shattered my trust so completely that I started doubting everything I thought I knew about us. In those videos, she flashed this smile that made our marriage vows look like a joke. It was like she didn't care about the promises we made, like they were just words she could shrug off. She moved through those clips with this attitude, like being my wife was just a role she could drop whenever it didn't fit her vibe. It was like marriage was a costume she could swap out for something flashier. I kept turning it over in my head, how long had she been like this? Was this the first time she stepped out, or just the first time she wasn't careful enough to hide it? The woman I fell for used to cradle my face in her hands, swearing she'd always pick me over anyone else. But the woman in those videos? She acted like I didn't even cross her mind. Before I left for my trip, I spent a few days digging through old texts, photos, and little notes she'd written me. It was like flipping through a stranger's scrapbook, piecing together a life I didn't realize was already falling apart. The woman who came with me wasn't some fling or a hired stand-in. She was someone I'd met at the gym months back, just a casual acquaintance at first. We'd only had light chats, nothing heavy, and I always kept things friendly but distant. Still, she picked up on something about me, like she could see the weight I was carrying. She noticed how worn out I looked, how my mind always seemed somewhere else. One day, she asked if I was okay, and I just laid it out, honestly, I'm not sure anymore. She didn't get teary or dramatic, she just heard me out. So, when I called and asked, "Wanna come with me to this amazing place, no strings, just real moments," she didn't hesitate to say yes. I made it clear she wasn't just a pawn in some game. She deserved better than that, and I told her I wanted whatever we had to be genuine, not a show. She grinned and said, "All right, let's keep it real then." And somehow, in those 5 days, we did, laughing more than I had in the last 2 years of my marriage. I wasn't faking being alright, I was actually alright. Being with her didn't feel like escaping my problems, it felt like walking out of a dark tunnel into sunlight. She didn't pry for details about my mess. She didn't need to, she saw the burden I'd been lugging around and just let me breathe without it. That video we made together. It wasn't scripted or staged. It was just us, unfiltered and real, capturing a kind of honesty that hurt to feel but also set my soul free. Once I shared it online, I switched off my phone. I didn't want the drama or anyone trying to talk me down, I just craved some peace for once. The next day, I wandered hidden beaches, swam in water so clear it sparkled, and ate fresh food under a sunset that looked like it belonged in a painting. For the first time in ages, I felt alive. I wasn't someone's fallback option anymore. I wasn't begging for attention or scrapping for love, I was just there, fully in the moment, and it felt incredible. When I powered my phone back on 2 days later, all hell had broken loose. I had over 40 messages, half from mutual friends, half from her, blowing up my inbox. Her first texts were frantic, like she was unraveling. "What's going on? Where are you? Who's that woman?" It was like she couldn't process what she'd seen. Then her tone flipped to blame and guilt trips. "How could you do this to me? You made me look like a fool in front of everyone. You're acting like a kid." I didn't bite or fire back. I just let her stew in her own confusion, knowing she wasn't used to being the one ignored. She always expected to be chased. Her last message that night was short: "Can we just talk?" But no, we couldn't, not anymore, not after everything. I didn't reply, not because I was speechless, but because I finally got it. I didn't owe her any explanations. She'd made her choices long before I started making mine. The silence I gave her was the same kind I'd been drowning in for months, those lonely nights when she'd scroll her phone instead of talking to me, those chilly mornings when she'd leave for work without so much as a glance. That silence had shown me exactly where I stood with her. Now, it was her turn to feel its weight, and I hoped it hit her as hard as it had hit me. 2 days later, my phone started buzzing with her calls, first one, then another, then 5 back-to-back, all going straight to voicemail. I just let it ring, ignoring the noise of her desperation. I was lounging in a hammock, warmed by the sun, sipping coffee with the woman who'd joined me on the trip. Her calm presence felt like a steady anchor in the storm I was weathering. By then, I'd spilled the whole story to her. She deserved the truth, and she didn't bat an eye, just listened with a quiet strength that made me feel understood. Her hand rested gently on mine as she said, "Man, you're handling this with more class than most guys would." Her words stuck with me, even if I didn't feel all that graceful. Inside, it wasn't grace driving me, it was something colder, more piercing. Not quite anger, but a razor-sharp clarity that felt like it had been forged in the heat of betrayal. I wasn't out to make my wife suffer. I was just done shielding someone who'd never once thought to protect my heart from her careless choices. When I got back home, I didn't creep in like I had something to hide. I strode through that front door with my head high, owning my truth without apology. The house was dead quiet, almost spooky. Her suitcase sat untouched by the door, like she'd come back expecting a showdown but found nothing but stillness. She'd probably rolled in while I was still gone, bracing for a screaming match. Instead, she got my silence, and I bet that hit her harder than any argument ever could. There she was, slumped on the couch, arms folded tight, eyes red and swollen from crying, but still trying to pull off that defensive glare she used when she felt backed into a corner. "You really think what you did was all right?" she snapped the second I walked in. "No greeting, no, I missed you, just dodging blame like always." I held her gaze for a long moment before I spoke. "You talking about my video?" I said. "Or how I finally started giving you the same treatment you've been dishing out to me?" She let out a scoff. "Don't try to spin this around. You made a fool of me, of us, in front of everyone." Her voice was sharp, but it didn't cut like it used to. I kept my cool and said, "You ditched your ring, danced all over strangers, turned our marriage into a punchline. All I did was show you what that looks like." She opened her mouth to fire back, but nothing came out. Maybe she expected me to crawl back with apologies, or thought her tears would pull me under like they always did. Her crying used to break my heart, but not anymore. I was done pleading for someone to get me when they'd never even tried to understand my side. "I didn't cheat," she muttered under her breath. "We were just messing around, having fun." That word, fun, like our vows, were a game she could pause whenever the mood struck. I let out a low, bitter chuckle. "Betrayal doesn't always mean sleeping with someone," I told her. "It's when you make it clear the person you promised to love doesn't matter." She shot up from the couch, ready to unleash the same old storm I'd weathered 100 times, but I wasn't sticking around for the show this time. I brushed past her, headed to the bedroom, and started tossing clothes into a bag, not to make a scene, but because there was nothing left here for me to hold on to. Our home, the one we'd built together, felt like a hollow shell now, stuffed with faded memories and the ghosts of who we used to be. I needed room to breathe. When she saw I meant business, her voice softened. "Hold on," she said, reaching for my arm. "Can't we just talk this out? We've gotten through tougher stuff before." "No," I said, easing out of her grip. "I've been through hell, and you just stood by watching." That was it, my final word on a story that was already finished. I walked out without slamming the door or slinging insults. I just left, closing a chapter that had ended long before I had the guts to admit it. I crashed at a buddy's place for a while, a guy who knew the whole messy saga and didn't give me grief for finally choosing myself over her. Her texts kept coming, but they weren't the same. Now they were full of sorries, long confessions, and promises to change, like she'd suddenly seen the light. She wrote that she'd screwed up, that she missed me, that she was scared of losing me. But those words just slid off me, empty as the promises she'd broken. If it takes losing someone to figure out their worth, maybe you never deserved them in the first place. That's the truth I was finally starting to live by. She had no clue that something in me changed for good on that trip. It wasn't about getting even anymore, it was about finding myself again, piecing together a life I could actually live. For the first time in years, I could picture a future where I wasn't always bending over backward to keep her happy. That glimpse of freedom shone brighter than anything she could ever dangle in front of me. Those first few days after I walked out felt odd, like I'd stepped into someone else's shoes. My mornings weren't filled with the chaos of her rushing around, getting ready for the day. Gone were those sharp, passive-aggressive sighs she'd let out when I suggested we grab dinner together. It was like a weight had lifted, and I didn't even realize how heavy it had been. I didn't have to spend every moment analyzing her facial expressions, trying to crack the code of whether we were all right. That constant guessing game was finally over. Instead, I woke up to quiet. And for the first time in forever, it didn't choke me, it felt calm, like a deep breath I'd been holding in for too long. I spent hours just walking, lost in thought, replaying the last 2 years like I was watching a film I used to love but now saw for the letdown it really was. There were so many warning signs I'd brushed off, late nights at work with nothing to show for it, weekends when she needed space, but came back cold and detached. Then there were those private phone chats, her screen tilted just enough to keep me out. Subtle moves, but clear as day when I looked back on them. I'd convinced myself it was all just stress, that she was worn out, that she'd snap back to the woman I married. But deep down, I knew she wasn't coming back. The woman I fell in love with had been slipping away for a while, and I'd been chasing a shadow, hoping she was still out there somewhere. She wasn't. She'd checked out emotionally long before she packed her bags for that so-called girls' trip. I was just the last one to get the memo. All that time, I was clinging to promises we never followed through on, dreams we never chased, and a loyalty she didn't bother to return. Then there was the woman from the trip. She wasn't just a quick distraction or some rebound fling, she was something real, something different. She didn't barge into my life like a tornado, I'd already survived that storm. Instead, she was like a warm dawn breaking after a freezing, endless night. We kept in touch when we got back, not diving into anything too serious at first, just swapping thoughts on music, books, food, and dumb memes that had us cracking up way past midnight. Every time we talked, I felt something I hadn't in years, comfort. No overthinking, no faking that I was fine, no tiptoeing around to avoid setting her off. One night, she said, "You don't have to hand over your scars to someone just because they were there when you got them." That hit me like a ton of bricks. It made me see I'd been pouring every piece of myself into my ex, even when she stopped caring. I thought love meant grinding through her neglect, like it was some noble sacrifice. It wasn't noble, it was just isolating. I'd gotten so used to feeling alone, even when she was right there, that I forgot what connection felt like. About a week after I left, she showed up at my buddy's place. I was in the garage, sorting tools with him, when I heard a knock and her voice, faint but unmistakable. I had no urge to face her, but part of me was curious, so I peeked out the window. There she stood, hair pulled back, makeup barely hiding the dark circles under her eyes. She was clutching her phone like it was her last lifeline. She looked diminished, not physically, but like her usual confidence had taken a hit, like she knew she'd gone too far. She stood out there for a solid 15 minutes. I didn't budge. I couldn't let myself open that door, knowing she'd try to reel me back with half-baked truths and recycled memories. I was tired of patching up wounds that only bled again when I got too close. I'd spent too long trying to fix what she kept breaking. In the end, she walked away, no tears, no big scene. She just turned and left, like she'd read the final page of our story and knew there was no surprise ending coming to save her. I stood there, peeking from behind the curtain, not gloating or puffed up with pride, just steady and calm. I thought I'd feel some rush, knowing she was finally tasting the pain I'd carried, but all I felt was a wide gap between us, like we were two actors who'd lost our script and stumbled off the stage halfway through the show. A couple of days later, a letter showed up in my mailbox, handwritten, pages stuffed with sorries, old memories, what could have beens, and, I never meant to hurt you. She wrote that she missed me, swore she still loved me, and was terrified of losing the life we'd built, but here's the kicker, we didn't have a life anymore. All we had was a dusty pile of history, worn out and full of holes neither of us could patch, and I had zero interest in digging up something that died while I was still trying to keep it alive. I didn't bother writing back. Instead, I turned my focus inward, started seeing a therapist, jotting down my thoughts in a journal, and reaching out to friends I'd pushed aside while I was busy trying to keep her satisfied. I hit the gym again, began eating healthier, sleeping deeper, and just living better. Every day, I carved out more space between the guy I used to be and the man I was turning into, and with each sunrise, the part of me that lingered too long, groveled for crumbs, and waited for love that never showed up faded a little more. One evening, my phone pinged with a text from the woman I'd traveled with. "You up for dinner this weekend?" she asked, keeping it light, just two folks who enjoyed each other's company. I looked at the screen for a moment, then grinned and typed back, "Yeah, that sounds real nice." Dinner wasn't labeled a date, but it felt like something I hadn't known in ages. We didn't have to fake our way through small talk or tiptoe around hidden grudges, we just chatted, about real stuff, silly stuff, and the weird ways life throws curveballs when you quit trying to control everything. She wasn't putting on a show to wow me or trying to patch me up, she was just herself, fully and unapologetically, and somehow that made me feel like I could start showing up as myself again, too. We hung out at that little restaurant until the staff started mopping the floors around us. I walked her to her car, not expecting anything, just grateful for a night where my heart didn't feel like it was carrying a ton of bricks and my smile came easy. Before she got in, she looked at me and said, "You seem different, lighter, like you're actually happy." I didn't argue, because for the first time in years, I wasn't dragging around the weight of someone else's silence, saying sorry for wanting better, or holding tight to who someone used to be. I was right there, in the moment, and it felt like a gift. The weeks that followed rolled by like the first warm days of spring, gentle, but bursting with quiet new beginnings. My ex still sent the odd message, a photo from a beach we used to love, or a long ramble about a dream where we were happy again, but I didn't reply, not to be cruel, but because her voice no longer had the power to sway my day. I hoped she'd find her way to peace, I really did, but I couldn't be her guide, I'd nearly lost myself trying to play that role before. Folks around me started picking up on the change. My buddies stopped checking if I was holding up and instead asked what I was doing to seem so different. I laid it out straight, I quit pouring love into someone who only cared when it suited her, stopped tearing myself open for someone who didn't see the damage, and let go of a relationship that had dried up long ago. Once I did that, everything else in my life started to bloom. One day, out of the blue, an old buddy I hadn't talked to in ages gave me a call. He'd caught wind of that honeymoon video, it had spread through our friend group like a juicy rumor that hit too close to home. "Man," he said with a chuckle, "that was brutal, but kinda epic in its own way." I laughed, not because I was thrilled about hurting her, but because it was the first time someone saw my side without trying to downplay what I'd been through. He asked if I had any regrets about how it all went down. I mulled it over for a second, really giving it some thought. Nah, I told him, not one bit. I didn't pick this fight, I just quit waving the white flag. That's what it felt like, freedom. Not the over-the-top, Hollywood kind with big speeches and dramatic slow-mo walks, but a quiet, steady kind of peace where I didn't need to snoop through her phone, guess her mood, or beg her to see my worth. After a while, my ex stopped reaching out. Maybe she got worn out, maybe she moved on to someone new, or maybe she finally figured out the guy who put up with her neglect was gone for good. I didn't throw a party when her messages stopped. I just let it go, like flipping to the next chapter in a book I was done reading over and over. As for me, I kept on living my life. I took more trips, some on my own, others with company, and dove back into hobbies I'd let gather dust. I picked up writing again, letting my thoughts spill onto the page. I even got myself a dog, something she always said we couldn't fit into our schedule. Turns out, I had plenty of time now. Time to heal, time to grow, time to step into the man I was meant to be before someone convinced me to dim my shine just to keep them comfortable. That's what I had in spades. And the woman from the trip? She stayed in my life, not out of obligation or desperation, but because the way we crossed paths in the middle of our own chaos just clicked. She didn't fix me, I wasn't some broken puzzle. But she showed me that even after getting burned, love could still feel safe, like something I could trust again. Folks sometimes ask what I'd say to my ex if I saw her now. Truth is, I'd probably just stay quiet. The best closure I got didn't come from her apologies, it came from the peace I found when I stopped chasing her words. That silence turned into my freedom. And with that freedom, I built a new life, not flawless, but mine, every bit of it, and that's worth more than anything. So, if you're out there feeling like you're the only one holding a relationship together, like you're fading away while your love gets taken for granted, hear me out, you're not nuts, you're not weak, and you're not asking for too much. You're just pouring your heart into the wrong person. There's a whole world past the pain of betrayal, beyond the endless cycle of begging, wondering, and doubting yourself. Once you step into that world, once you choose yourself, everything shifts. I made that choice, and I'm never turning back to the way things were. If this story hit you hard, if you've been through something similar, or if you're teetering on the edge of putting yourself first, drop a comment and share your journey. And don't forget to hit subscribe for more stories like this, because sometimes walking away isn't the end, it's the start of something brand new.